Hey y'all, welcome back. It's Nikki here of the How to Be Magical podcast from Soul Things With. And today's episode is very special, very near and dear to me, a friend, a family member, a cousin, if you will. Today's episode is called Spirit Work Beyond the Binary, and it's about Hoodoo healing and ancestral wisdom with my good friend, my cousin Gerard of Altered Roots, coming in from, are you in Seattle?
Seattle right now.
From Seattle, but by way of North Carolina?
Family is North Carolina and Maryland. Yeah.
Okay.
With a little bit of necessary Virginia.
Okay. So by way of the DMV, Carolina,
Yeah. Tidewater.
now to the
Chesapeake
Pacific
Bay.
Northwest.
That's right.
Okay. Gerard, welcome. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you. This is good. I will let folks know this is the second time that we record.
Yes. We tried a couple of years ago and it did not pan out.
No, the robots conspired against you.
Yes. So I lit the appropriate candles and made my offerings for today to make sure my technology, a couple things been bringing down on me, but not the good stuff. Just,
Mercury got her head wrap on today.
Yeah, she got her microbrain right now. So, she acting up. But thank you so much for this episode, for coming in, and I'm really excited. I love this little tapestry you got going on in the back. What is?
This is Kuba cloth from the Congo. It's the bark cloth that the Kuba people make.
Is it like a print?
No, it's hold on. Can I get you close?
I'm sorry, I done got derailed. I'm like, what is that?
Shoot, I'm about to drop all my stuff. No, it's the actual. It's dyed. So the light parts are appliqued onto the dark part. So the dark part is dyed with other bark, other dyed as the base, and then it's appliqued on this maze pattern.
See, that's what I'm saying. We already into the binary right now, right?
That's right.
We're already into the
lights and darks, ones and zeros.
We here. So can you just tell the people at home a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how did you get started on your journey?
Okay. I am born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, Baltimore, Murderland, Northwest Baltimore, Park Heights, Zone 15 to be specific, for anybody who cares. My family, like I said, is about equal parts North Carolina, Southern and Central Maryland, very much in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, the Tidewater region, with a documented history going back to at least 1720. You can figure about 1688 is the oldest date that I have a record for somebody. And that is I'm going to get her number right. I believe my 10th great grandmother, Ann Carroll.
Okay.
I am a child of the Upper South. I am a Tidewater Hoodoo, practicing that Chesapeake Bay conjure tradition, raised in the Pentecostal Holiness Church, came out the church house, went to the masjid. Then in the meantime, I was hollering at the Hare Krishnas, the Buddhists, and everybody. Sought initiation in Isheshe, Ifa Orisha practice. Looked into initiation for Haitian Vodou, and ultimately my ancestors said the line that I've been quoting for years now. We got spirits at home. And so with everything that I learned and researched and everything that I tried, ultimately I found myself back squarely in Hoodoo with a lot of references to Igbo cosmology, the Igbo tradition of Odinani or Omenala as sort of the continental reference. And then I translate through Ifa Orisha practice because that's what a lot of people are more familiar with.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a Hoodoo, I'm an herbalist, I'm a doula, full spectrum. I'm a diviner, I'm a gardener and forager, textile and craft artist, heavy air quotes, community educator.
Your work is beautiful. No air quotes necessary. Honestly, those altar cloths are like so. Yeah, it's very interesting to see how many people are taking up like a quilting type of modality these days. I feel like we're all getting back to our roots with the textiles in different ways. So I do love your textile work. It's very beautiful.
Thank you. I was just talking to our friend Joy about, shout out Joy Tabernacle Life.
Shout out to Joy Tabernacle.
About sort of that craft renaissance, right? So Joy has been making beautiful brooms.
Oh no, her brooms are
knock your socks off.
Like very gorgeous.
I recently got hit with the basket weaving bug, and I've been in my crochet and quilting, and I'm in garments now. I'm doing we're gonna talk about masquerades and stuff. I've been working on that. But yeah, the handicraft, the make, do, and mend, really putting my hands on materials and in the earth. It's the same thing as gardening to me,
Okay.
and connecting back to ancestral practice.
Now you mentioned foraging. Now I
Mhm.
know that the Pacific Northwest has a totally different, well, maybe not totally different, but it does have like a different climate. It's
Yeah.
than the DMV. The
Yes.
yeah, the DMV
Mid-Atlantic. Yeah.
Mid-Atlantic is I would say it's a little more it's different than the Pacific Northwest, was I imagine to be more rainy, more wet in that sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of like your herbs and the herbs that you will use in your practice, like how have you made adjustments? Like what are the differences for you?
The I'd say the common herbs are the same,
Okay.
right? So let's say most of the garden stuff, very similar, if not same, because they all came over on the same ships, the same people, right? Um, there are some things that are you can find in the wild, like nettles, dandelion, which again came over with them folks, that are still easy to find. The stuff that's different and interesting is things that are less so things that from back east that I can't find here, more stuff that is from out here that I'm not used to. So, like, I grew up with raspberries and some regular blackberries, but out here they have salmon berries.
Now, what is a salmonberry?
It's a rubus species, so it's related to blackberry and raspberry, but they're small and pink. The berry themselves looks like a thing of salmon roe.
Okay.
They're not as sweet or tart. This actually the flavor's a little bland. But getting to know things like that. Or last year I went out on a harvest for Devil's Club, which is technically a vine or a shrub. It's called the Devil's Club because if when you find it after the leaves have fallen and everything, it literally looks like these sticks poking up out of the ground covered in spikes. Like old dude's baseball bat from The Walking
Yeah.
Dead. They
Yeah.
look like that.
Okay. Now,
But
what do
it's
you like? What are the properties of Devil's
like
Club?
Devil's Club is an immunomodulator, so helps get your immune system together. It is antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial. It's also good medicine for the brain. Things that are more common out here because of all that rain and moisture along the water is usnea, the what do they call it? The Spanish beard, Spanish moss, the old man's beard
Moss. Okay.
is very much more common out here than it is anywhere back east. You find it growing on trees here like you do find it in like Louisiana.
I was about to say that's like we have Spanish moss in Jamaica.
Exactly. So
Okay.
it's that same humidity belt comes up from the Gulf. It hits over the mountains, hits here.
Mhm.
Um, so with stuff like that, getting used to the territory and to the seasons has been hard. But as somebody from the Chesapeake Bay is the largest natural bay on the East Coast. Puget Sound is the largest natural bay on the West Coast. And it's literally like you take one, flip it upside down, you have the shape of the other.
Oh, I see what you mean. So the climate is kind of inverse a
Yeah,
bit.
it is. And we have like our mountains are on the different sides. It's like when you flip it. So in the same way in Maryland, Virginia, Northern North Carolina, Delaware, I can go swimming in the summertime on the beach and skiing in the wintertime if I was the kind of person that went skiing. Do the same thing here. Beaches tend to be more rocky than sandy because all the volcanic activity out here. But like we have the eastern cypress and the eastern cedar. Here it's the western red cedar. So there's a lot of parallels
Okay.
and then some necessary differences. Like you see, what is another thing I really got to know out here? Horsetail.
Mm.
Horsetail, which is high in silica. It's great for people use it in hair treatments. They do a wash with horsetail. People also use that as an immunomodulator. You have to be careful because that salicylic acid can build up and be toxic for the liver and kidneys. Like building relationships with new plants in a new place has been interesting. My hoodoo has shifted as necessary.
How long have you been out in Seattle?
It will be 6 years this year.
Wow.
We moved right before the pandemic.
Okay, yeah, because I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like you've been out there that long, but then it also seems like you've been settled.
Yeah.
You settled
Summer of
in.
19.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Now, when we talk about like harvesting plants,
hmm
right?
Sorry. And it's important. I moved here not from Maryland, but moved here from New York, moved here from Brooklyn.
Okay.
And so I really deepened a lot of my herbal practice and a lot of my early foraging stuff in New York. And then moved out here and had access to so much more, so many different environments than I had necessarily.
Well, that has to be incredible because I mean, New York, we have a few things, but you got to really look for stuff.
Yeah,
And
and you got to know where to
you
go and
gotta
how
know
to
where to
get
go.
it.
You gotta know what to look for, and then you also gotta worry about the cleanliness of certain things because you like, you might see something good in a place, but it's high foot
Right,
traffic. You like, I
right,
don't really want to pick anything from here. It's got car exhaust and foot dust.
exactly. Here, I can literally go 20 to 40 minutes in any direction and be in a state or national park,
That's
in
so beautiful.
a
A
forest,
forest, like a dense forest.
like the woods.
That is so nice. But that has to be like so restorative on like your nervous system too.
It is. It's the reason why we moved here, honestly, because the city, love New York, miss New York. That's Brooklyn for real. But it was that the city got too stressful. The energy of the city and people, lifelong New Yorkers, 60 years old, were telling me that the city had a character that it had not had before. It had taken on an energy, mostly because of all the transplants and the high cost of living and all that stuff we could talk about. But that people who had been literally living in New York for 70 years were leaving. And then coming here, my partner and I had visited here a few years before. And we moved, it was the mountains, it was the lakes and the rivers, it was the forest, it was the woods, it was the cotton candy sunsets. It was that like deep, like not even deep, it's like almost a circumstantial connection to nature because it's just everywhere. Then there are trade-offs for that, but yeah, we came here because of all that nature, because of that difference from concrete jungle to woods.
And I think that's something that people forget, especially about America, is how big the
hmm
continent, the continental United States are, like, and how vast the varying differences of climate and
hmm
landscape and just like everything is so like I went to the West Coast last year. Well, not all the way to the West Coast. I went to Colorado
hmm
for a job and I was just like blown away by just the beauty of the mountains. Like I'm like, I have not
Yes.
seen mountains. Like I'm like, what the hell? I thought I seen mountains.
Yes.
I had never seen mountains until I got over there.
As an East Coast person, we think we've seen mountains.
Yes.
I had not really seen mountains until I stayed in Montana, and then when I visited my mom in Utah some years ago. She lived in the Salt Lake Valley, mountains everywhere. Then you come out Pacific Northwest. We got in Seattle, literally on a good day. If I look to my right, I have the Cascades, which just snow-covered line looks like a dragon's back. And then I look over to my left, and it's the Olympics, the Olympic mountain range over the peninsula going down this way. Look behind me is Mount Rainier, which is part of the Cascades, but it's an old volcano, so it's just sitting by itself in the middle of everything. And it's just like, dang. I didn't know what the night sky looked like until I lived in Montana for a summer. I found out they call that area Big Sky for a reason. And I remember you posted pictures of you in Colorado, and I'm like,
Oh my God.
it's
It was like, it
pretty.
was so beautiful. It was so, so beautiful. I was like, wow, I was very, it definitely, there's something about nature that makes that makes us have that feeling of like, God is real, like all of these things, this,
We are riverine forest apes. We need water and trees to feel okay,
like
like
truly,
as a species.
like
But we
true.
live in brick and concrete, steel and glass.
There's just something about just nature and even herbs, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
the healing power of herbs. Like when you just think about like this little plant has so much energy, it has so much
Mm-hmm.
personality, and so much
Mm-hmm.
character, and so much force. And if I put this little plant with this other little plant, I can make some stuff happen, something could go down here.
Exactly.
I could make something because something could pop off here, actually, you know?
Even like, and I like my grandmother always growing something. Like I grew up, she had like little mini jungle in her living room, you know. And when she brings in the plants for the winter, and just along the windows in the back wall of the living room, you just got different trees and shrubs and plants and stuff. And then summertime they get to go outside and be outside. And then my grandfather fills the balcony with the stuff to stay outside. Like, and even something like I was gonna say onion, but something like garlic, right? Like we think about garlic and we see the head of garlic in the store. And then we get it home and we use some of it, but then we leave it on the counter.
And then you get the little green shoots.
And what happens for most people? What happens when we get that little shoot, that little green part? What do we do?
They cut it off or throw it out.
Throw it out. And I'm like, for every one of those shoots is a new garlic plant. Each one of those, if when you break one of those cloves, that's a whole nother plant that can give you at least 5 more cloves. And then like you talk about put this with this, learning a few years ago that the alanine, which is the oil in garlic, onions that give them that
That pungent.
fragrance, that pungent scent. You understand that that is the plant's defense mechanism to damage. So I was told I was raised macrobiotics eating, so like using the properties of the plant to your benefit. So I was taught we eat onions, garlic, potatoes, ginger as much as we can because those are 4 plants that left alone, and sweet potato. Those plants left alone will grow themselves. They have all the properties necessary for life within themselves. They are self-sustaining. And so we take them and we take in that energy of life, of abundance, of growth, right? That manifested growth in their habit. But then also what that alanine is able to develop and cure if the body of the plant is broken, and then if you wait for about 10 minutes, having that oxygen, the oil um, cures and becomes more bioavailable. So I was taught a few years ago, and this is a freebie for listeners. When you chop your garlic, give it 10 minutes. Chop your garlic, leave it sitting on the counter for 10 minutes before you use it.
Okay.
The the beneficial properties of the garlic will be more bioavailable, be better for you. You have greater effect if you wait that 10 minutes. If you doing your little mixes, you making your fire cider, you're doing, if we're talking about the magical side, you're doing your workings and it involves garlic, chop it, or just if you just breaking it, put the knife over it and break the cell wall, let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes, preferably around 8 to 10 minutes, and then use it. It'll be that much better for you. Smell a whole house up, smelling wonderful. Also a trick, if you want to impress somebody, make them think that you can cook better than you actually can. Smash that garlic, let it sit on the counter for 15 minutes. Smell a whole house up. Somebody walk in your house and be like, oh, you cooking, cooking.
That's the garlic. The garlic is cooking. The garlic is
Right.
talking.
They don't know no better. Yeah. So it's those little things, those little connections. So like I will make a garden, a jungle anywhere I live. Even as a teenager, I had a little croton plant and a African violet in my room. Grow something because that connection to nature is vital. The Japanese came up with their word that the English translates to forest bathing, right? And they say that 20 minutes of forest bathing a day is soothing to your central nervous system because we are supposed to be living in close contact with nature, the forest, the grassland, the marshes, the Sahel or the savannah, the desert, wherever. We're supposed to be in line with nature. And my nature, being the descendant of forest West Africans, mountain forest indigenous people here from North Carolina, and then born and raised in Maryland. I need water. I need forest. I need a little mountain.
Yeah, that mountain, when I go, like, especially when I'm on different jobs or whatever, I always make a time to
Mm-hmm.
wander off and just go sit in
Mm-hmm.
the trees and just put my hand in the dirt and
Mm-hmm.
say a little word of thanks and leave a little
Mm-hmm.
something. And my
Mm-hmm.
coworkers be like, "What you doing?" I'm like, "Mind your business.
And
Keep
if you
on going."
take too long, it'll start calling to you.
Yeah, no, really. I be like, I gotta go over there and smoke this cigar a little bit, and blow a little rum and just like cool it down. Cause all of the spirits, they like it too.
Mm-hmm.
They get that energy from it too. So it's like I
Mm-hmm.
always have to remind myself, like we can't. It's not just that we're cooped up in the house. We got all of our spirit guides with us, cooped up in the house too. They want to go
Right.
out in nature. They need to go to the river, and to the beach, and to the mountain,
Right.
to the forest, and to the
Look, y'all, we on vacation. We taking a trip. Let's go.
So it is interesting. I'm glad that you mentioned the mountain indigenous people, because that is something that I think when we talk about herbs, especially in the Americas, a lot of people, they only reference good old sage, right? Good old white sage. And it's like, but there were other herbs that were here that we had adapted to, that we were introduced to through, with the help, with the assistance of the indigenous people that were already here, in their respective areas around the country. And everybody did not use sage. That is not a universal practice, right?
Most indigenous people on this continent did not use sage up until about 150, 200 years ago. That plant is from Southwest California and Baja California, Mexico. It comes from a very narrow area. It is a sage. It is one of many sages. So the name is Salvia alba, right? White
Yeah,
sage.
salvia
It's
alba.
the one. And the indigenous use only happened as a result of healing from colonial trauma.
Mm, mm,
Because
mm.
it's when the powwow circuit kicked up at the very beginning. It's after, like, think about the ghost dance movement and then what became the powwow trail, that folks from southwestern California, Baja California, Mexico, shared it with relatives, I think in the Navajo and Hopi nations, who then shared it with their relatives up in Colorado and Utah and whatnot, and got it up into the Great Lakes region. And then it spread east. Like, it became a thing. White sage is only one sage. If you have rosemary in your house right now, in your garden, along the side of the road, rosemary is a sage.
I
The
love me
kind
some
of
rosemary.
kind of thing that you in the jar that they use for cooking. Clary sage is a what? Is a sage. Like, there are so many. And then, like I said, I was in Montana. I got introduced to desert sage. I got introduced to blue sage, which I think the Apsalica, the Crow Nation, I think the blue sage is their women's sage. Then they have a men's sage, which is the sage brush.
Okay.
In one area, one nation's area, they have three native, and then there's some white sages growing over there. So four indigenous sage species that are growing right there. Rosemary came from Southern Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean as a whole sage. So I tell them, look at the sage in your, look up the sages that are native to your area, but also what are the common kitchen herbs. I'm good for a kitchen herbal, a kitchen witching situation.
I'm always going in the cupboard because it's the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's the same
Most
stuff.
people didn't use, and then our people, like, okay, so what's the sage or sage equivalent in West Africa? Because then that is what people would have known. The people who were brought here, our ancestors who were brought here,
They would have been looking for that.
looking for that or something similar. Because we always understood cognates. I can't find this, but I found something close to it. I found something that looked like it, feel like it, seemed like it. The same thing that had Europeans scared to eat tomatoes, had rich Europeans scared to eat tomatoes,
Why were they scared to eat tomatoes?
was that correspondence because they knew of Atropa belladonna, of deadly nightshade.
Oh, yeah, tomatoes are nightshade. Eggplants, tomatoes, all of that.
So they saw this plant that was being brought from the Americas, and they went, no, because that looked like that thing that if I eat three of them, it'll put you on your back forever. So they didn't try it, and they gave the tomatoes as animal feed. And then the European peasants, famously in Italy, when they fell on hard times, they started eating it, like, let me try this stuff. Found out it was good, started making it. But it was because that same like identity. They were like, I see this leaf shape, color, the formation, it looks like this. So the Europeans knew to stay away from it. Same thing, Africans got here and they went, okay, if I don't have, oh my goodness, what is it called? Oh my goodness, the Igbo name is avoiding me right now. They're the tree that the also the staff of authority is made from in West Africa, in Igbo land, is related to and is a type of cottonwood.
Okay.
So then folks from there got here and went, okay, I don't have that tree. What's the next thing? Cottonwood. So they used that. You had looking for ironwood. So people, I don't have my Iroko tree. Okay. So then I'm gonna find my next hardwood here, ironwood here. So I'm gonna use that. And they went plant by plant. And this is another one of those things where we again we are riverine forest species that then spanned out to every other ecological niche. But you had people who were expert farmers, who were expert gardeners, who were expert medicine people, healers. They knew the land, they knew the water, they knew the plants and animals that grew in them. And so, even though they got taken from one continent to another, one climate belt to another, they figured it out. They were like, okay, I need something. Okay, what looks like the thing? And they
Mhm.
look at every stage of the plant. Well, okay, the green shoots look like this. Okay, the leaves look like this. Okay, the flowers look like this. Okay, the seed heads look like this. Okay. You trap somewhere made to work, and in the 4 to 6 hours of quote unquote free time that you get, you got a little bit of time, often made to uh, garden and feed yourself beyond the little rations that they try to give you.
Or
So
or patch something together to wear,
yeah,
or
yeah. So you
fix
figured
yourself
it out.
somehow, or
Yeah, you figured it out. Anyway, I'm running my mouth.
no, it's beautiful because when we talk about, like we just said, this whole thing, these people, these folks of ours came here and they made something work, and they
Hmm.
understood that they didn't have the same access to the same tools, but they had the same problems they had back home. They had different problems now. Now they had a unique set of problems on top of the existing problems, and they were like, well, we're gonna use the same modalities anyway, like even within this system of oppression. And I feel like that's truly what the power of herbalism and hoodoo really is. It's like
Hmm.
we have an oppressive situation happening, and we need to use what we have to get a favorable outcome
Hmm.
in very unlikely circumstances. So, so in your practice and
Hmm.
in your experience, because you work with herbs, you also you do doula work for the community.
Hmm.
Can you share a time when the herbs helped and aided in some transformative process for a client?
We're in an interesting political climate, so I'm thinking about what story to share
Don't you ain't gotta
judiciously.
exactly say you ain't gotta tell all of your business, but just something that comes to mind.
Okay, simple thing. A word that I want everybody to learn because it's one of my favorite words because it sounds silly, then it's fun. Mucilage. Mucilage. The adjective is mucilaginous. That's an adverb too. Mucilaginous. If I say mucilage, just look at the word in your head. What does it seem similar to?
Mucus.
Mucus. Yes. So mucilaginous is that thing that is slippery, that is slick. So mucilage is the property that okra has. When you soak your okra seeds or when you fry it, the thing that people don't like because it's slimy, all of that slimy stuff is mucilage. And so things like okra, people famously, especially with black herbalists and black birth workers, okra water. You take your okra pods, crack them open, you either chop up the leaves a little bit, let them soak in cold water for at least 30 minutes. Let that mucilage express itself. And then you can drink that water. You can rinse with that water. And so the thing I'm thinking about is somebody with delayed labor
Okay.
Or with, I'm thinking about two separate situations actually, with delayed pregnancy release, where the body is having a hard time letting go in that moment. Literally smooth things along is drinking okra water to add that slip, add that smooth, slick texture. Your body can only produce so much at one time. Give it a little help.
That's so funny you say that because I definitely have seen and heard from older women saying like I ate okra my entire pregnancy and the baby just slipped right out.
Yeah, literally, literally, literally.
Baby just slipped right out.
Slip,
I barely
slipped
had
right
to
out.
push.
Yes. So okra water, what else has mucilage that's easy? Corn silk. You can use literally, if I would run to
Like
my
from the
refrigerator
ear of
right now,
corn.
literally, yes, the
Okay.
corn silk. They sell it in the herb shops too, dried out. You can use it fresh, but it's easier to get dry for obvious reasons. Dried corn silk, let it and do what they call a cold infusion, um, and let it express itself. Something else that does that. Marshmallow, not the candy, the plant. Marshmallow is a plant. It is a mallow. And everything in almost everything in the family does this. So hibiscus is a mallow. Okra is a mallow. Cotton is a mallow. Garden, and then you have garden mallows and marshmallows and marshmallow, similar mucilage to okra,
Okay.
the green leaves, um, and um, a sweeter taste though. And so the way we got the candy was that people would do a cold infusion of marshmallow roots, which have most of the mucilage and most of the healing property. So you could take marshmallow root, you can drink that, you get that same slip. And then they would take that, it's already a little gummy. They would add sugar to it, add gelatin or a tar to it, let it set up, coat it in powdered sugar. That's the original marshmallow. It was actually medicine. And it became candy, just like Coca-Cola was originally
Coca-Cola.
medicine, became just a soft drink, just a snack. Stuff like that. Like what else does that? So okra, marshmallow, corn silk. That's enough. Those are them three. But examples like that abound. Like stuff that's right there at hand. You got all around you.
Now we haven't talked about it yet, but we're gonna talk about it now. So when it comes to like, there's been like we talking about this current political climate, there's this like
Hmm.
back to like conservatism, like hardline conservatism, very,
Hmm.
very, very strict gender roles. I'm finding a lot of people are trying to come back to our traditional practices with this very Western, strict, binary, like hardline gender role
Hmm.
and trying to apply it in our practices.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily think that that's what we need to be doing because I really
Hmm.
don't think that that applies.
Hmm.
So, how does your identity as a queer Black person influence and intersect with your spiritual beliefs and practices?
It's everything. Like my gender, sexuality, spirituality, vocation are all one thing. And I like what you said, leading into the question of like using that term conservative, right? How do I cut this? Because I could go on. So, pop culture's understanding of liberal and conservative has little to do with the actual definitions. Even like if you go into like deep, like political science, liberal and conservative, if we're talking about, say, just American politics, liberal and conservative socioeconomics, let's call it, is really about how close do we stay to what is written or the way things have always been done. Anytime we're reading things that are not on the page, anytime we're taking liberties with the text, that is a liberal move. When you're doing more than is strictly right there, or that has demonstratively been done in the past, that is liberal. I say that to make the distinction between, because a lot of the stuff that these people are doing, specifically right now in Washington, are wildly liberal decisions, liberal processes. They are taking liberties with the Constitution, with what is going on with, right? So it is, they are taking liberty. The socioeconomic thing, conservatives are really like, let's do the least. And when we talk about small government, let's be the least restrictive, but it is also conserving, restraining the power of corporations to do too much. What we have now is what they call neoliberal movement, which are they are neoliberal because they allow the corporations, these corporate entities, to do whatever.
Yes, with no type
They
of government oversight at all.
no, they are liberal decisions that allow them to do. They are at liberty to do whatever. Right? I say that to say we can't necessarily map these what is conservative in a European context to the African or even indigenous American context. What is conservative for us, if we were to hold to the traditions of our ancestors, looks liberal to a Western imagination. Okay. And I always take it back to linguistics. That's what my degree is in. In our West African languages, specifically like the Niger Congo language family and the Kwa subgroup, there are no gendered pronouns.
I was just about to say, I know in Yoruba there's no word specifically for man and women. It's like the one who walks strong and then the one who sways.
Yep.
I always love.
Yes, literally. There is no man and woman. No he, like even if it's just pronouns,
He,
no he and she. It is one, someone, they, a person. Same thing as I'm learning the Cherokee language. There is no he, she, there is person. So, and then you get it, there's all like, again, I can run on, but there's no necessary, like, it's not a binary separation. It's a dualistic and co-supporting model. There are these people that do this, there are these people to do that. And anytime there's these people that do this and these people that do that, there's always been somebody in the middle who does both or neither. And generally, across our cultures, the person that does both or neither is given specific roles in the community. As someone who sits between, they often are the go-between. And so you find often that people who don't fit the convention of what is considered a man or a woman might be as a otherwise male socialized person gets involved in the women's tasks, brings strengths and sensibilities to those things, and then can report back from the women's side, like, y'all brothers need to get it together. Vice versa. Hey, sisters, this is what the dudes are talking about. Often find themselves in the position of spiritual advisors as midwives and doulas, find themselves in positions of storyteller, of leaders in specific councils, specific kinds of ritual, where that in-between position is more useful, right? Being able to, as someone who lives in nuance, being able to see, appreciate, draw out, and explain that nuance and get people thinking in ways that they otherwise being locked into their own little avenues wouldn't be able to, right? Tend to be those who are closest to the land. Be the ones who are in charge of the babies and the old people. Like, generally, that's women's work, but also the person who's in the middle will join them in that. But on the flip side, there are warriors who go out and they bring a certain energy, they bring certain spirit into that work. So I say all that to say everything that I do is aligned. I am a non-binary person. I think knew from a younger age, I did not understand until my early 20s what it is to be neither man or woman. Though I am seen as male, I was socialized to be a man. I was never good at it. It was always like a bad fitting suit. It just never quite sat right. Everybody knew it. I knew it. I got picked on. You get somebody a hand-me-down suit that don't fit them. They don't feel good in it. People look at them. That seems silly. You ain't doing it right. You look kind of off. And they make comments. You draw eye, you draw attention in the wrong ways. Now I get some clothes that fit me. I get a situation that is right. But in all of that, as I learned more about myself, I looked for examples. And the examples that I found were the things that those people were involved in the things that I was already interested in. It was the storytellers. It was the birth workers. It was the medicine people. It was the story. It was all of those go-between folks. It was the spiritualists. It was, those who stand at the crossroads. And then again, I went from, like I said, the church house to the mosque Because coming out of Pentecostal holiness tradition, I felt like I needed something as structured and that took itself as seriously as the Holiness Church does. So I found Sunni Islam. Then I went hither and yon. And as I was looking into, like I said, Vodou and Isheshe, Candomblé, Lukumi, found examples of spirits, found examples of stories that were like, no, you good. You okay. There's a place for you here. The modern version of the Black church did not have room for me. I knew I was born, as they say, born with a word. It wasn't a word that the people was trying to hear. It had been made clear to me that they weren't trying to hear whatever I had to say. Not really. Like they wanted all the spiritual gifts and all the benefits.
Yeah, but just be
but
quiet
not,
and sit in the back.
But say it the way we want to say it. Say it the way we want to hear it.
Yeah, and make sure you dress appropriately and all the things.
Right.
Yeah.
All that. We'll come back to my return to not into the church, but reanalyzing the church, specifically the Hoodoo church, the holiness church as the Hoodoo church, right? The Black church as a bastion of Hoodoo and cultural retention. But in Candomblé, I found Logunede, who, according to tradition, is the child of oh my goodness, they're gonna get me. Help me out, Lord. The hunter.
Chelsea?
Oh, Chelsea, thank you. Oh, it's right there. I saw the S's in my head. I couldn't say it. The child of Oshun and Oshosi, who lives half the year in his mother's compound, half the year in his father's compound. He wears and uses both the clothing and tools and insignia of the hunter and the clothing, insignia, and tools of the water folks, of the healers, of the diviners, and is duality incarnate. Right. There is the story of, and I'm not quoting Odu out here wildly, correct me if I get the citation wrong, but I think it's like Oshe Odara. It's the story of the birth of Eshu. Oshun's pregnant in the belly, and it's is during her retreat when the men played in her face and she left.
They was always playing in her face. They was always.
But they
always
left.
counting no tune.
She left, and she was with child, and Oludumare, Obatala had already gone to Oludumare and said, "Hey, can we get some help? Can we get some help?" Orumila went up, say, "Hey, can we get some help?" And Oludumare was like, "Hey, I don't know. That's on her. That's her business. I gave her a task to do. Y'all screwed it up. Ask her if she want to go back." Okay. And then the conversation and depending on the version I've heard, it was either Orumila or Obatala went to her and asked her. It's like, please. And I believe it was, and she said, okay, deal. If the child is born female, quote unquote, as one who sways, the way you just said, I ain't coming back. And all of this IA thing that y'all got can crumble and burn because you got land, you got fire, you got wind, you got no water. If the child is born, quote unquote, male, I'll have pity and I'll come back, bring the waters back and all that. Everything that is sweet in the world. According to the one version of the story, the great diviner, Orumila, leaned over in the belly. Out the Eshu was like, hey, yo, we got thing we trying to work out here. Can you, so your mama has said, you heard what she said. Please, can you please? What we got to do to get you come out born male so she can have pity on us. Can you have mercy so she can have pity? Please. And somewhere in the belly, Eshu turned over. Eshu, who was going to come out female, took pity, had mercy, came out, chose to be born male that time. And so she looked, all right, fine. Here, have y'all a little water. But in that, there's a lot of things, right? There is the self-determination of the child's identity. There is this acknowledgement, and it had to be the child Eshu, right? The one who sits at the barrier, who sits
on the line, just sits at that
right,
line in the middle.
Right. It is that Eshu, and all of us spiritually and natally are neither male nor female. We are both. Understanding even like in that story is an understanding of biology that Western science only got to about 40 years ago. That every child is born quote unquote female.
They're saying that we're all born female, and then
we're all conceived and start out right.
That's why.
And then with the introduction of introduction of androgens,
yes,
we get those expressions, right? That difference. But baseline, and like these are things that the Yoruba people had encoded in stories 1,000 years ago. Another soapbox I'm avoiding. It's like that's in there, and there's this like we can choose, we can change. It doesn't have to be a certain way. And also in that story, the negotiation was, well, okay, I'll come out male. Y'all can have your water back, but everything y'all try to do from now on has to start with me. I gotta be first and last, and that's when Eshu comes into his position of prominence of like, hey, you right, because none of this would exist without the one who sits between. I
And
found
it's
that
so funny you say that because Eshu is the only one out of all of the Orisha who never had children. He's the only one out of the hundreds of Orisha that there are no Odu or stories of Eshu having made children,
having physical children.
physical children.
But then what does Eshu do? Collects all of them. Collects especially the motherless children. Collects the orphans. Collects the ones that are left out, right? Takes you in. And that was the role of the people who sat between. You might not have a physical child of your own, but if there is an elder who is in need of help, if there is a child without support, you go and you serve them, you help them, you take care of them, right? It's part and parcel. So I had these stories about Ishu, I had these stories about Ogunede, Logunede. I had these stories, excuse me, about other figures. But even like the Godhead, I read about the Fon cosmology and Mau Lisa. You have Lisa, who is the so-called male aspect of the Godhead, and Mau, who is the so-called female aspect of the Godhead. Together, they make God that makes creation. The Igbo have Eke, which is the mother force of creation. You have Chi, which is the father force, the ideas that frame that creation and cause the universe to be. But it's in their combination that we get existence. It's not dichotomy, it's duality. And so reading about my folks, I'm like, yeah, we don't even have a word for this gender stuff that y'all for these gender wars. Like if we as African people, as indigenous people are being conservative, y'all want to come to African tradition, then do African tradition. Don't do Victorian race and gender science, which is what it is. It's only as new as the late 1800s. Bring that over to African tradition and stand on that and call that business. Because you bring in, again, church stuff. And when did our stuff get formalized in the Black church? During the Victorian period. The same time that Oscar Wilde's trial made male homosexuality illegal and anathema in, right. They were like, oh, that whole scandal. Before that, it was like, I mean, you do what you do. It's whatever. Heterosexual only became a term. It was a medical term as a pathology in the early 1900s. They were studying homosexuality before they were studying heterosexuality. Because there was this fluidity is conservative. Because who am I to tell somebody else what to think, how to live, how to be? I can only control me. So if I'm being conservative, if I'm conserving,
You're only worrying about you and what's going on in your sphere. When you start worrying about what everybody else is doing and the neighbors and the people down the street, that's
you're taking liberties. You're being liberal. So I tell the conservatives, if you want to be conservative, be conservative.
and mind your damn business.
Do less.
Because right now y'all doing the most.
Y'all doing the most.
Now right now y'all doing the most.
That's not conserving to what?
Conserving to who? They couldn't tell you. They couldn't tell you. But with that being said, we could talk about this all day about the ways in which Hoodoo and our African traditional spaces and traditions lend space to queer liberation, lend space to Black liberation, especially in.
Sorry, connected to that. Yes. The other example that I was looking for that I was going to draw out was the female sons and the female husbands associated with them. You get this a lot in Igbo land and nearby areas. It's all across the continent, but especially like the formation is, okay, it's a patrilineal society.
Okay.
So the name, the land, title, all of that stuff passes from eldest son to eldest son. The other sons get what they get, right? And then wives move to their husbands' compounds. It's African light patriarchy, right? And we can go into how all the stories tell us that everything started as a matrilineal matriarchy way before it was ever patriarchal. Because who did, after Oludumare gave the Dilogun to Obatala, who did he give it to actually use? Was it Oshun? Oshun had the bag of Ifa, had the bag of wisdom before Orunmila got it. She taught Orunmila how to use it, but nowadays Babalawo has been set up as the only, again, not my tradition. I'm not initiated. I'm just saying the stories that I've heard from respected,
Just,
initiated heads.
we're
I'm
not
just
trying
saying.
to stir the pot too much. We're not trying
I'm
to
just
stir the
saying.
pot too much. But
But you got a pot. But you got a pot though. So in that structure where you need a male heir. If a man, let's say, only had daughters, then his, and this is, I'm going to speak specifically in the Igbo tradition so I can keep it aligned. Then he would name, if the man only had daughters, he would name his eldest daughter as his son and heir. Because again, we don't have words for man, woman, boy, girl, husband, wife as meaning what they mean in the West, right? It's the role that you play. So he names his eldest daughter as his heir. That daughter is now able to go out and marry wives. The daughter goes with her as the representative of her father's estate. She goes and her family negotiates with the other young woman's family. They make an arrangement. She marries the daughter from that community. That daughter comes over to this community. That daughter, the wife, can choose who she sleeps with.
okay.
Any children who are conceived and born to that wife are now considered to be within the household, not of whoever the sperm donor was.
But of whoever the house, the heir.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So they become a grandchild of the original father. And then when they come of age, that first male child is now the head of that house. So you had in that sense. So you could be a woman marrying another woman. So same-sex marriage was normal. It wasn't the standard, right? The standard was a man and a woman and children, blah, blah, blah. But there was always a caveat eked out, because in order for this economic system to work, where land and title pass through the male heirs, well, if we have to have a male heir, then we need to have something, because what if I only have girls? And I don't want all of my wealth and my family's lineage being lost as it's dispersed among all my daughters. Okay, so you, senior daughter, go get a wife. She might also already be married to a man and have a husband. And then he goes, and this usually happens with unmarried women and with women past childbearing age,
Okay.
or with some other situation. Maybe she was born unable to conceive, right? They go, so that her father's family name and line can continue. It's built into the system already. That's our conservative. Same-sex marriage is not unusual to the truly conservative African who understands their traditions. That's why I was getting at.
I think that, a lot of people, especially people who may be in the margins of what mainstream society has, could really understand that, again, like we're saying, when we're going back to our traditional, our diasporic beliefs and our traditions, when we take away the colonial mindset and the white conditioning and the European conditioning and the hostile nature of, this very, malevolent God, right? Not benevolent at all, right? When we take that away and we're just left with people who exist and spirit that exists, I think people could find that they could have a lot more peace in their practice and even reconcile some things in their own bloodline by living in their truth, living and existing in a way that makes sense for them. Because this can't be healthy for people to walk and try and compartmentalize themselves and push themselves into some type of box and live a life of misery and drudgery and all of that. Like, I don't think that's good for anybody. You can't convince me otherwise.
And we know it's not. They've done the clinical trials.
Like, we keep on like adopting, like, we can't go on with this conditioning and this mindset. And especially now when the system is doubling down on, you need to adhere to this, you need to do this. If you don't do this, we're going to get you. I feel like this is our time to be like, no, we need to embrace everyone in the community. We need everyone to feel like they have a space in the community. And we need everyone to feel like they have some agency and some power within this system, within this structure that's telling us that we don't have agency and power.
The same structure that is telling queer and trans people not to be themselves, right? Not to live openly and to do all the stuff that is the same system that did not allow women to get their own bank accounts until the 70s. Is the same system that said that a black person did not have any legal standing to which a white person was obligated to respect, right? It's the same system.
That was saying that black women had to cover their hair because it was too offensive. It was too
And then got mad because they was too fly. And then got mad. And then got mad because the head wrap was even flyer than the neck.
And it's like, okay, wait, again. But, so I think people need to understand there is no length that this system won't go to oppress you. Okay?
And then they said, and then they didn't like your head wraps, so we started. You couldn't wear a head wrap into the church house. So then what did they trick out? The church hat.
So again, we're constantly being inventive and innovative. So I think that we should really and truly understand and recognize that our queer and trans family, there is room for them. There's always been room for them. They've always existed, right? Our queer family has always been part of our liberation movements and efforts. Bay Rustin, eBay. Right? We wouldn't have no civil rights movement without Bay Rustin, right? Like, put some respect.
Wouldn't have a Harlem Renaissance without a Zora Neale Hurston, a County Cullen, a Langston Hughes, a Richard Wright for whatever he's worth.
Richard Wright, but again,
he was in there.
There was room for everyone in their fuckery.
That
Lorraine Hansberry and Audre Lorde, and Alice Walker, right? Like we could keep going and keep going. We cannot separate ourselves from each other in these ways. And we can't force these rigid expectations on each other because all we're doing is suppressing our spirit as a whole.
There is a direct line between Bessie Smith and Lucille Clifton. Lucille Bogan. Lord, Miss Clifton, I'm sorry. Bessie Smith and Lucille Bogan.
God, Lucille Bogan with them spicy ass.
There's a direct connection from them.
Spicy lyrics, oh God.
I'm saying, from them, from Lucille Bogan and Bessie Smith to Sylvester to Lil Nas X and Doechii. And when things come up, you judge the response or reaction from the people who call themselves conservative. When I was talking to Joy and Michael earlier, we talked about all this political climate stuff right now as being what, my great grandmothers would call white people business.
Literally.
And that we as black people are supposed to stay out of white people business.
Ain't got nothing to do with us.
Because otherwise that's how we get hurt, right? So if the oppressor, the person that we all have agreed is our oppressor or representative of the oppressive force, right? Because it's not an individual, it's a weapons of our warfare, not carnal, right? Made mighty to pulling down a stronghold. We wrestle not against power. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places, all that. But if we recognize that this is our adversary, this is our oppressor, and he's telling you that this is right and that is wrong, telling you to do this and not do that.
Why are we listening to them? Truly.
Why are you agreeing with him without critique is my thing, right? Because science is science, right? Right is right and wrong is wrong. So if he says it, if you go investigate it, and you say, God damn, he's right. You know what? Water is indeed wet. Because that's most of what they come up with anyway. It's like, you look at it, it's like, okay, that's just real. That's just true. But when you look at the thing and you go, something ain't right. And this is when we start to talk, especially just as black people, but also as spiritualists, start honing that intuition. If you hear it and something don't sit right, you go read into it and find out, no, I don't know. That kind of seems like, and it always is, again, because we're talking about our oppressor, we're talking about our adversary. If there's a power imbalance that is possible, I guarantee the people that are considering themselves conservative are going to do the thing that puts them in a position of power over you or somebody else. And if they don't get to you first, they're going to get to you eventually. So I don't care whatever you claim to believe, whatever identity you claim to hold. If there is an oppressive force that is declaring this is right and this is wrong, and we're talking about morals. James Baldwin said, and I'm a misquote, so I'm a paraphrase. It is asinine to appeal to the morals of someone who has demonstrated that they have no moral center. So if they're talking about value, right? They love to tie it around family values. Well,
Whose family?
up until about 50, 60 years ago, depending on where you are, 40 years ago, family values included having that old black woman cooking 4 square meals for your kid, for your family, taking care of the kids so your wife could be on her barbiturates.
And
Family
now
values
family is
included,
y'all stick mama and papa in nursing home, and the first fight
right,
is convenience.
that's
That's
values.
value.
Values was the slaveholder's wife holding the whip over black children. That was family values. So what y'all know about a value now? What y'all know about family now when you spent centuries separating families?
Purposely.
Hold us purposefully.
Purposely.
Because even then, because it was economically advantageous for you. So why am I listening to him about a daggone?
That's why I'm so glad to see black people coming together. First of all, what isn't it incredible to see us getting back to doing all of these line dances? Modern day ring shots.
So literally, okay, you're gonna have to get Joy on this podcast because we talked about, and she's like, go back to the ghost dance. And I'm like, yes, these are our ghost dance. I just got the boots on the ground steps down pat last week. Now working on a country girl. Yeah. Now I'm working on a country girl with that little hip twist.
The little twin. There's like 4 and 5 different ones, but I'm just like this. But when I see it on mass, right? When I'm seeing thousands of people in the dirt moving in unison with a little cup of something, I mean, it's so.
Cup of something here, a fan over here, a whistle.
The whistle be giving me there's always somebody been in with a tambourine. I'm like, what is God? It's so beautiful, and it really makes you think. Like, yeah, this is something we really need to get deep in black people's business. Truly, we have so much that we could be doing.
I advise people, and I try my best to, we talk about things as practice, right? Not just theory, because Chairman Fred said theory is great. Theory without practice is bullshit. So I try to Toni Morrison my life. Toni Morrison, she got early criticism in her work for not writing it. She don't write about white. There are no white people. She's like, there are white people there. They're not written as characters on the page for the most part. And when they are, they're a terrible force of destruction and disruption. But she was like, growing up, there were people. That was us. And there was people, and then there was white people. So I ain't know them. Not telling anybody else's business. I did not regularly see or engage. I did not know white people in real life until second grade, with the sole exception of Miss Wantner, who was the pre-K kindergarten teacher at my elementary school. First, it had to have been first 2 years of Teach for America being in existence. Because how did this girl wind up in Emerson Village in Northwest Baltimore? I don't know. And Paul Bench, who was married to a lady at my church. I saw 2 white people in real life, ever, until second grade. White people existed on TV. So even now, people are like, oh, people that are I'm like, who people? And then they go, oh, white people. I'm like, I forget that they're a factor because I don't organize my life with them in the center or even proximate to the center.
It's healthier that way, honestly.
Outside of my physical safety and my psychological safety, for the most part, I don't think about them. I try to Toni Morrison in my life. When I'm thinking about black, I'm thinking about people. I'm thinking about black people, indigenous people. I put when I write BIPOC, I write it with a capital B, a capital I, often a slash, and then a little POC, because that's who I am. Think about my people, and think about the people who've got the short end of the stick, right? So I'm thinking about when I think about, I don't think about them. They are not my organizing principle. Be it trying to accommodate them and appease them, or oppose them. You know, my mother told me not to define myself in negation. We don't think about, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that and I can't do this and I won't do that and I'm not this and I'm not. Okay, what are you about? What are you for? So all the people, bless their hearts, who are like whose organizing principle is, and we make jokes about it in the community, right? Oh, well, the man, and you know, white people never let you do nothing, and da, 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 da. So their life is organized around opposing white folk,
But
but that still means
kind
you
of
organizing your life around white folk.
you still obsessed with them.
Then you got the Candace Owens who organizes her life around appeasing and appealing to white folk because some black folk made her mad when she was a teenager, um, or early 20 something. But your life is about them. My life is about me. What is it? If my life is about me, that means it got to be about black people. It got to be about indigenous people. It got to be about queer people. It got to be about nature-based people. It got to be about spiritually minded people. That's who I'm. That's what I'm about. And like Toni Morrison said, that's who I'm writing for. That's who I'm working for. That's who I'm building for. And I only take, just like our ancestors did, only take from them what is necessary and useful for as long as it is necessary and useful.
For me. And that's
for me and mine. And that's it.
And that's it. And whatever else they doing ain't none of my business.
That's white people business.
Truly. Truly. So before we sign off, for any of our listeners who feel called to herbalism, you know, there's some people, you know, now's a good time, right? Now's a good time. It's spring, the weather's breaking, it's getting, you know, it's getting nice, but also prices for stuff is about to be going up. What are some things that you recommend that people could grow in their kitchen? Real simple.
I'm gonna say that. I'm still here on the mic, but I'm gonna grab something real quick. So something simple. You know, people talk about how easy it is to grow basil. I don't think basil is the one to start with.
Basil, I've been fighting for my life trying to keep my basil alive.
Yeah, basil be having a lot of people on the back foot. I wouldn't say that's the way to go. I would.
Okay, because I was like,
don't let that be the
plant.
Yeah, no. If you're trying to start with basil, you're gonna be messed up. Easiest things. It sounds silly, and you be like, oh. The green, if you like, especially if you like West Indian or Asian food, scallions, green onions.
Okay.
So you get the scallion, and I'm talking about you don't have to buy a seed, you ain't gotta buy no dirt. You at the store, you at the grocery store, go to the produce section, get the bundle of green onions, the bundle of scallions. Use them as you like. The best way to keep scallions for a longer term, you can either do it on the counter if your living situation allows for that. I like to use a mason jar because it has a heavy bottom. Put it in a mason jar, cover it with the produce bag, the clear plastic,
okay,
translucent plastic produce bag. Just tent that over it, hold it together with a rubber band or elastic, whatever, with water up to about a third of the way. Cut and come again. You clip it as you need it. And because they always leave the roots attached to those scallions. So it'll continue to grow. As long as you keep that water refreshed every few days or so, keep it tented so it has that moisture. Actually, if it's outside, you don't necessarily need the bag, but it helps. So use that. You can be growing, you can have that on your counter, on your windowsill, have that out. If your living situation doesn't allow for that, that same onion can be in the door of your refrigerator. If you don't have a lot of shelves in the body of the fridge, put it in there and it'll grow. You can clip them and cut them, just keep changing that water out. It is better to have them out in the sunlight because, like any plant, they want to photosynthesize. They'll last longer. But them same things, after a while, if you don't like the water method, you can put them in a thing of potting soil, in an organic potting soil, and grow it that way. Same thing. And I know you've seen the videos come up on Facebook and YouTube. Same thing with lettuce. Take your head of lettuce when it has the little thing on it. Cut off the lettuce but that bottom part,
the little butt part.
Stick it in a cup of water. And that lettuce will start to grow out from the middle. Carrots, It'll start to grow. You'll get the green plant. Like I said, my grandmother always had something growing. So something famously as Black people, sweet potato vines. Take that sweet potato, put some toothpicks around it, drop it in over a bowl or a cup of water so that the base of it sits in there. Won't it root? And then you'll start seeing those sweet potato vines come out. Sweet potato vines are edible.
I didn't know that.
Sweet potato vines cook down like spinach.
Okay.
High in vitamins and minerals, antioxidants. They're used as a substitute for like egusi leaves,
Mm.
or you like that like stewed spinach, West African style. You can do the same thing, and with sweet potato leaves, little like stuff like that. Another one that's good medicinally as well, and that's easy to grow. Lemon balm. Lemon balm, which is a lemon mint. It is not as energetic as your regular mint. So if you put it in the ground, regular mint grows by they all grow by rhizomes. So they grow by those underground stems. So you put mint in your garden over here 1 year, 2 years later, you'll see it clear across.
Rhizome as well.
And that's the other one I was about to say.
Okay.
So lemon balm is great because it has a slower growing habit, so you can have it on a counter, no problem. It is a calming nerve vine. So it helps to soothe your central nervous system. It helps to calm you down, to de-stress, helps to treat anxiety. And lemon balm, it has a little lift. Gives you a little energetic, little ray of sunshine. Great in the wintertime. And then ginger. With ginger, all you have to do, get a pot, moisten the surface of the soil. Well, do it like moisten all the soil. Put the ginger on top and go like this, just to get it down. So it's sitting in the dirt, like on the top layer of the dirt. Keep it moist. You can throw a little layer of dirt just on top, like sprinkle, sprinkle. Keep that thing water. It will root. You'll get ginger shoots sprouting up. If you fully cover it, but like shallow cover it, the part of the ginger we actually eat is not it's not actually the root. We call it a root vegetable. All these things, potatoes, sweet potatoes, ginger, all the stuff we consider root vegetables, those are actually the rhizomes, the underground stems.
Mm.
So if you cover it, you can have from one piece of ginger, 20 like fingers or knuckles of ginger. And you subdivide those even more, and you can multiply. You have ginger forever. Even if you just keep it as a green plant, but you want that ginger taste, flip off a couple of the leaves, throw it in your dish. You got ginger taste without all the work.
Now, what you got going on where people can support you? Where can we find you? What's up?
I'm working on some things. Wait, before that, so I was gonna say, everybody, if you're trying to get into herbs and hoodoo and gardening,
The roots.
this here book, Working the Roots, Michelle E. Lee.
Oh, you have a bookstore.
So Michelle E. Lee spent 6 years doing oral histories, interviews with medicine people and plant people throughout the South. She starts in North Carolina, goes all the way to Texas across 6 years. There are oral history interviews, so you hear personal stories. You hear Michelle's personal story. There are, if you just want to use it as a textbook, there are plant profiles in here, breaking down what each plant is good for and how to use it. There are recipes in here, and there's stuff in here for physical healing and for spiritual work. So you can find me on social media at altered.roots. That's ALTARED roots. Alter, like the one you pray at. Altered.roots. That's Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. My website is www.alteredroots.com. That's all one word. On my website, you can find links to my online store and keep up with any classes that I post. The thing I'm really trying to push in my store is actually sign-ups for my community supported apothecary, the CSA. It's a subscription-based plan where every quarter you get a delivery of herbal medicine as well as some other gimmies. So there might be a zine, there might be some art, there might be there is a newsletter. There might be links and discounts to other things in other places. I also have an affiliate page on bookshop.org. So all from my website, and you can find all these links just from the Instagram. But I have a bookshop where I have several categories ranging from African, and I call it African religion, philosophy, etc. There is one for herbal. There's a category of books for herbalism and root work, like root doctoring. There's a link for birth work. There is a list for Afro-Indigenous fiction, Afro-Indigenous children's literature. There is one for political theory, political philosophy, and there's one for sexuality and gender studies. So I keep these lists populated. I do get a 10% kickback as an affiliate of Bookshop, and I always encourage people, as you're learning, as you're getting books, as you're reading, go to your local bookstore, preferably Black and or woman owned. If not, if you have the money to spend. If not, your library, whether it's the public library or the academic library. But if those aren't around, or you just feel like giving a couple of dollars to somebody, bookshop.org/shop/altered roots.
Okay. Well, thank you. This has been
Thank you.
very informative. I feel like the people are going to be well fed and have lots to think about and engage with us on. As always, thank you so much for coming on, cousin. I love you
Thank you.
dearly. Thank you for
I
sharing
love
your
you
wisdom
down.
with the collective and like I said, giving us something to think about, food for thought, all of the good things. Especially in this political climate and this social political climate that we're dealing with right now, it's nice to just have options available
Mm-hmm.
for people to understand that we do have personal power and that
Mm-hmm.
everything is not always black and white. Sometimes it's a little in between, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's right.
if we want to survive in this world, we're gonna have to embrace the light, the dark, the masculine, the feminine, up, the down. We're gonna have to embrace it all.
Issue mentality.
We have to embrace it all in order to fully experience the breadth of our humanity. So with that being said, this has been Spirit Work Beyond the Binary on Hoodoo Healing and Ancestral Wisdom with Gerard of Altered Roots. Thank you so much, cousin, for
Thank
checking
you.
in with us from the Pacific Northwest. As always, my name is Nikki Buchanan. I'm the host of the How to Be Magical podcast. I'm the owner of Soul Things Botanica. You can find me online at Soul Things BK. You can find me on Substack, Blue Sky, X, Instagram, all of the Facebook still, but we're on Substack, soulthings.substack. We have the Boneyard. We have $8 a month paid subscription. You can read all of the articles and everything like that, and you get early exclusive access to the podcast before it drops, as well as access to the community where you can engage and stuff like that. So, cousin, I'm set you up over there so you can engage with our people over there. It's a good time. It's a good time over at the Boneyard. I have been dropping a couple of articles. As of at the time of this airing, I will have already completed my series on the commissions. I did a whole series talking about the commissions. I started with the Congos, the Madamas, the Gitanas, and the Indios. So like a nice little four corner situation, talking about all of the different spirits within our quadrilles, the spirit thrives. And yeah, as always, again, thank you so much, everybody. Keep it black, keep it magical, and keep it cute. Peace.